On this episode of Purposely Curious, we sit down and look into some of the world's most famous geoglyphs, focusing mostly on the Nazca Lines in Peru. Why were the geoglyphs made? What was their purpose? Who was the intended audience? Join us as we discuss this out-of-this-world subject. So get nice and cozy as this episode starts now. Hello, Leonie.
Greetings, Mary. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Enjoying this fall cool weather. How about yourself? How's everything?
Everything's good. The weather is amazing. I love it. I don't know if it's my bed. So obviously my bed is like 2 years old.
Okay.
I used to sleep in pajamas like all the time. Like I had to have socks on and you name it. But since I bought this bed, it's a little bit warmer. So I would notice I would sweat sometimes. So I would sleep essentially like with undies and socks, or sometimes I'd take the socks off while I was sleeping.
Right.
So it's been kind of cold this last week, right? So I've had my fluffy socks, my pajama pants, and like my pajama top. And I've slept really good. So that's how cold it's been. It's not probably it's cold for California standards.
Right.
I mean, people out in the East or Midwest probably think it's not cold.
Right. Right.
But yes, I've actually used my portable heater for the first time this year.
Nice. How big is your heater? I'm just kind of curious.
I'm not sure. It's pretty big. I have to hold it with both hands.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's not a box. It's kind of like a cylindrical type heater.
Oh, right.
I do have a gas heater. You've been to my place.
Yes.
I have a gas heater that's like old school, but I don't trust them. I'm afraid to die.
Yeah.
So I have this portable heater that I put up in the garage.
Right.
If it's not used. But I prefer the electrical. I don't sleep with them on, so I'll like use it in whatever room I'm in, right? And then before I go to bed, while I'm maybe doing my night routine of my skincare, which is like crazy, guys. And then I'll read my book, and then when I'm done reading my book, I will get ready, turn off the lights, and turn the heater off. So it's not something I leave on all the time, but it's warm enough to get me to sleep, I guess.
That's good.
So yeah. But yeah, so I'm enjoying the weather. Also, I don't know if you noticed, Leonie, that I have been on 2 different podcasts where they wanted to interview me. So I wanted to give them a shout out. And that was the Mega Man podcast.
Nice.
Which is already out if you want to listen to it. And then the one that I did on Monday is the Talking Again podcast. And I believe he said that episode would be out on the 17th, which would be next week.
Oh, cool.
So that was kind of nice. I was a little nervous for both of them.
Why?
Just because it's like different, you know what I mean? Like they wanted to ask me questions. It wasn't like me where I'm like in control of this one, if that makes sense. So I was really nervous, but I got through both of them. So I wanted to give both of them a shout out. So thank you guys for asking me to be on your podcast. Very
cool. Yeah, I'm not surprised. You're a very charming, charismatic person. You have a lot to say. You're very well-rounded. You're very intelligent. So it's like, why would anybody be surprised that anybody would want to talk to you? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's one of those, after this, people are going to listen to this. They're going to be like, you're going to book like 7 more. You're going to be like on 7 more podcasts. And I'll be like, yeah, I'm not surprised. It's just like, you know.
Well, you're too kind, Leonie.
No, please.
But I mean, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a ditzy girl as well. I once, it was an electric stove, wanted to put a tortilla on it. Cause when you use a gas stove,
yeah,
you put, my mom would put the tortilla on top of the gas stove, right?
Right.
She wouldn't use anything.
Right.
So I did that on an electric one, and the tortilla, exactly. So I'm not always there mentally.
It's okay.
So don't talk me up too much, Leonie.
No, but on that note,
too.
I could top you on that one though. Mind you, in my lab research career, I worked with everything was dangerous, right? Everything, right? Including electrical stuff. Mind you, I went to that period in life where I'm like, hey, I got a George Foreman, so I want to fucking cook everything on there. I'm gonna make quesadillas, I'm gonna make burgers and grilled cheese sandwich, So of course, I'm cleaning up the George Foreman, right? So what do? I take a soapy sponge. Mind you, that thing is still plugged in, okay, and it's hot. And I take a soapy sponge right to the George Foreman. Guess what happened?
What?
I got fucking electrocuted.
Oh my God.
Oh, not once. No, because you would think that, okay, holy shit, like that was that, they laughed it off. Like, oh, that hurt, right? Nope. Forgot about it and did it again like 30 seconds later. Electrocuted twice.
Hey, it is what it is.
And I was
But
like,
you're
you're
a genius. You know what I mean? You work for NASA. You're a scientist. That just goes to show that we could be really smart, but sometimes lack common sense.
But it's so ironic and so funny because everything I work in the lab with is so dangerous, right? That there's like this mental routine every single day. Did I shut off the CO2 gas? Is this off? Is this off? Electrical? This frozen? Where any one of those things, if anything was left open or on, could kill somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where a mental checklist, that's so like embedded into your daily routine. Then I come home and I'm like, oh yeah, let's take a soapy, sponge to a George Foreman grill that's plugged in and see what happens.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Just don't do it. It fucking hurts.
I'm going to tell you one more story. Because I have a lot of stories of these ditzy, stupid moments where I'm lacking common sense.
That's funny.
But this one was at my old job, and my best friend used to work with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like those, it's not a microwave. They're like those little ovens. Yeah. Now, this is where my kitchen talk, this goes to show you that I'm not necessarily a cook.
Like a toaster?
Toaster, yeah. Toaster oven. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
I was going to toast something. I can't remember what it was. And I put my food in there and went to my office because it had a timer, right?
Right.
I had my own like office space. And then all of a sudden I hear all this commotion. And the director was, I guess, putting out a fire of some sort.
Oh, shit.
So I put napkins in the toaster oven. And I guess they lit on fire. So the whole place was smoky. Yeah. So I'm a very intelligent woman with very intelligent, nerdy vibes with certain things. But when it comes to kitchen stuff, I'm fucking clueless.
Oh my
God. All my coworkers made fun of me for almost burning down the office.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, I've learned from my mistakes.
Yeah. Or so you say.
Yes, or you would hope I would, right?
Yeah, right.
Not repeat them, but yeah. So those are the two. Yeah, I got a tortilla stuck on an electrical stove, which was hard to clean and take off after, and then I almost burned down my old job.
That's funny. Conspiracy, all for the insurance money, I'm sure.
Oh my God, please. I wish. No, I'm just kidding. Anything new with you?
I've been just super busy with the podcast and working on some writing stuff at home. And that's about it. Just watching the world close down again. We're back there again.
We're getting there, yeah.
Which is
now, do you want to share the podcast, the name of the podcast you work with?
Sure. I mean, I do a horror podcast with a couple of my friends, Lauren and Trevor. It's called Boo Crew. And we're part of the Bloody Disgusting team podcast. They're like the number one source of horror. So if you like horror movies and, you check out their website, check out our podcast. We talk to a bunch of celebrities, either that star in the horror movies, write, direct, and even some musicians. So check it out if you're into that stuff. Yeah,
totally check it out. And then also if you want to hear where this all started, he was my first guest.
I was your first.
You were my first guest, yes. So we talk more about the culture in that episode. So if you want to check it out again, it's episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we talk about, when I ask you how you're doing, you bring it up. So I just thought if anyone hasn't listened to the first one, maybe that's why you should direct them to if they wanted to listen to that.
Yeah, definitely. It was a complete honor to be your first. There's so much to talk about that. And I know I ramble about that stuff, but it's interesting
because you're passionate. That's why.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's really interesting. I just had a listener from Australia reach out, and this dude is like super passionate about our show. Like he just been nonstop every day, like, oh my god this, oh my god that, and I'm just like, and he was kind of like, how do you know all this stuff? And I'm like, because when you're passionate about something, you know what I'm saying, you just know it,
Mm-hmm.
like you watch, like for example, if you're passionate about pop culture, then you would know exactly what's going on with Britney Spears right now and her sister and her dad. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't, right? Because it's not my thing, But
Yeah.
people, you have your own interests, and people that follow their interests, they get really good at researching and retaining that information, So for me, it's just like that because I've seen all these damn movies, and some are, some are new and some are super old, and there's that interesting trivia behind them and how they, connect to pop culture and the times we live in and all that. So it becomes a conversation piece. So when we talk to somebody, of interest, and then we say, hey, where were you when this happened, or when you saw this movie? And then they're like, oh my God, I was 8 and I was terrified, so it's like I could relate, and then there's a funny story, so it becomes a conversation piece, so yeah, it's just a thing of passion, and it's really interesting how that works out. And that's why I tell people, go, hey, if you're passionate about something, pursue it, do something with it, write about it, write a movie, write a book, talk about it on a podcast, go as a guest on a podcast, something,
Yes, do it. Don't be shy.
Yeah.
So check them out if you are interested in that. But I wanted to get to this week's subject. Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, 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 ding.
I wanted to talk about the geoglyphs. Most importantly, the Nazca Lines.
Yes.
Do you know what they are?
I know a little about them. I know because I've it's something that popped up, in the interest of the pyramids and, ancient aliens and all that stuff. It's popped up over and over.
Ancient aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I know is that, I know very little, but I know that they're, these lines in Peru, right? Is it Nazca, Peru?
Correct.
Where, these lines were discovered. I guess this would have been 1930s, is it? Or so, around there?
Yes.
Once humans took flight, somehow, these lines were photographed and discovered from such a, higher altitude, and researchers started coming over to Peru to investigate, and they found out that there's these interesting shapes, over 1,000, geometric shapes, and and it just become this interesting thing of like, well, who made them and why are they here, and what are they for, so
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
So what are geoglyphs? So geoglyphs are essentially a large design or motif on the ground, usually formed by classic rocks or any kind of element that you find in the landscape or where they are on. Geoglyphs are usually made by ancient people around the world, although, you see them now where people do them for PR marketing, right?
Right.
But they are usually larger than 4 meters. We're going to focus on the Nazca Lines, but I did want to go over 10 of the geoglyphs around the world. And you can tell me if you've heard any of them.
Okay.
Of any of them.
Right.
Obviously, we're going to discuss the Nazca Lines in Peru.
Right.
So that's 1. 2 is Atacama, the Atacama Giant. That's a geoglyph found in Chile. Have you heard of that one?
No, I have not.
Yeah. So when I was looking into these, I have not heard of a lot of these. So I'm like, wow, they're everywhere. 3, Uffington White Horse, which is in England.
Huh.
There is the Paracas Candelabra, also in Peru.
Okay.
There's the Blythe Intaglios, which is here in California.
Would that be in Blythe, California?
Yes.
Okay.
They are called the Blythe Intaglios.
Huh. Interesting.
Another one is the Works of Old Men, which is in the Middle East. I think it's in 3 countries. So they just put them all together.
Right.
There are also Amazonian geoglyphs in Brazil. There is the Russian moose. Where do you think that one's at?
Moose. I'll say Colorado.
No, Russian moose.
I know, I'm joking.
Oh,
Ruski.
I'm like, come on, Leonie. Sorry. Yes.
I got you.
There's also the Long Man of Wilmington in England. And another one, just like the Nazca Lines, there are the Kazakhstan lines in Kazakhstan. Now, I apologize for the mispronunciation, but these are just 10 of many that are out there that I didn't realize were out there.
Yeah, I didn't realize there were that many. I've heard a couple of these, but I didn't know about the one in Blythe, which is really interesting, But now I noticed there's two you mentioned on the list that are in England, right?
Yeah, I want to say it's Uffington Whitehorse. I might be pronouncing it wrong. And the Long Man of Wilmington.
Right. I wonder if those two are connected somehow to Stonehenge.
Stonehenge?
Yeah.
Oh, we said it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe. That could be another episode. Dun,
Right.
dun, dun.
Right.
Yeah. Funny story. My ex is from England, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to England with him for the first time. And he was like, where do you want to go? And I was like, Stonehenge. And he was like, why? And I was like, you don't understand. Like, that's in America. I used to watch like Unsolved Mysteries. And it was like, who built these? Like, I want to know.
Right.
So it was just funny to see a perspective of like an American, like, we have to go to Stonehenge, and him having grown up in England being like, why do you want to see these stones that are just like there?
You know what though? It's funny because all the Europeans come here and of course I'm referring to a lot of my Italian friends, the first place they want to go is where? Where do you think?
Hollywood?
No. I'm sorry. I should narrow it down and say like a national, like landmark park, like, like think of the biggest.
Yosemite?
Good guess, but think of the other one, the big one, the desert one.
The Grand Canyon.
Yes, they all want to go there. So it's one of those things you're like, why,
Oh my God, I've never been to the Grand Canyon. I want to go.
Oh, you know what? If you're gonna, whenever you go, because I know when you do things, you go on adventures. You gotta go through this. I'll have to dig it up for you and find it. But there's this Indian resort. I'm not even joking. Like, it's serious. You have to hike in. I think it might be a 10-mile hike or something in, but it's paradise. Like, your campsite is paradise. I'm not even joking. It's like waterfall, like the water is crystal clear blue, baby blue. Like, you have fresh running water if you need it. Like, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, one of my lab coworkers a few years ago, she went, and I was just blown away by the photos. I'm like, are you kidding me? And she's like, no. She's like, you gotta go. I just remembered, it's called Supai Falls.
Oh.
So it's not just like a little destination. Like, you gotta like, get the permit or whatever, and hike in a little bit, But
yeah,
from what you see, it's amazing. It's just something that you don't realize is there because it's deep in the reservation,
Yeah. I totally believe it. I've been to the Valley of Fire in Nevada, and the stuff that you see was just beautiful. So next year I'm going to make a point to visit a lot of those places if COVID permits.
Yeah, definitely.
But I did find two other geoglyphs that are in the U.S. It's the Effigy Mounds in Iowa and the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and if you look these pictures up, they're all amazing and crazy. And remember, geoglyphs are considered anything larger than 4 meters on average. So some of these are way bigger than 4 meters.
Yeah.
But I wanted to focus on the Nazca Lines. I have flown over the Nazca Lines, and it's crazy that you can see them from the air, right? You talked about when they were discovered. So essentially they were discovered in 1926 by Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Zespe, who studied them from the ground, though. How he studied the way that the rocks were separated, right?
Right.
But it was from the ground, but it was only until the 1930s with commercial flights that it was seen for the first time. The Nazca Lines were seen for their beauty, you know?
Right.
If you guys look up, if you've never heard of the Nazca Lines, I give you permission to Google them right now. It's amazing that these people, right, could make some of these Nazca Lines are so huge and so some of them look very childish and some of them look like geometrical perfections. And so, you know, they were only able to see the immensity of it until the 30s when the airplane was around, right?
Right.
Scientists believe that they were made by the ancient Nazca culture. So a lot of these geoglyphs that we talked about around the world are considered to be by an ancient civilization, been done by an ancient civilization. In the Nazca area, there is about 300 and more. 300. Yeah. I think there's like between 300 and 500 that they know for sure.
Wow.
But they believe that there's up to 1,000. A lot of them are of geometric designs, and some can be as long as 30 miles long. So this is where the conspiracy me comes in, right? They're 30 miles long, some of them.
Right.
How did they know and make them so geometrically perfect? Some of them, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, some of these, about 70 of them or more, are animals or plant depictions. They also found a humanoid, which they call the astronaut, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the side of a mountain. So some people believe that it looks like an astronaut. So if this humanoid Nazca line is of an astronaut, where did they see this so-called astronaut? Why would they make an astronaut, right?
Right.
In 2011, a Japanese team discovered a geoglyph that represented what looked like decapitation. Maybe it was kind of like the Mayans where they would decapitate or, you know, like offering to the gods.
Right.
In 2016, they also found a mythical creature that was sticking out its tongue. In 2018, they also found about 50 or more geoglyphs using drone technology to map, you know, with crazy detail, a lot of these landmarks. So they're continuing to find a lot of these Nazca lines. And the reason why they survive is that the Nazca lines are in the desert. So they don't have very much rain. So they're not eroded as much.
Right.
But with AI technology and drone technology, they're able to see from this drone technology, some of them that you can't necessarily see until you have that technology fly over it. And then if let's say they notice it, right? So this Japanese university notices it, they send archaeologists there, they're able to clean it up and then see the immensity that, yes, it's here.
Right. Yeah. And the reason for that is because the makeup of these lines they're made up of what? They're clay and lime, right?
Yes, so, and I think they also removed some of the soil in the middle of the lines, right?
Yes. So what happens is it's desert, so the winds blow, so the dirt covers up the clay and the lime. So even if you're looking by plane, maybe some of these aren't visible anymore because, you know, now you need technology, right? And you send a drone out there to fly high altitude, take photos, and then now you're looking for a different signature of light, you know? So then you can say, oh, there's something that used to be there that's covered. And maybe that's a snake, you know, or maybe that's a turtle or something, you know? So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that may not be visible anymore, but it's still there.
Yeah, and then there's also a few Nazca lines that have roads that go through them because when they built the roads, they didn't realize
Yeah, of course.
that it was through a Nazca line.
Right.
Supposedly the Nazca ancient culture was from 100 BC to 700 AD. So they're considered an ancient civilization. There was an American historian, Paul Kosok, based on, I guess he was out there in the 30s and 40s, based on the position of the Nazca Lines, he felt and concluded that maybe they were related to astronomy. Some other archaeologists believe that they were a way of transferring water, right?
Right.
But again, these are only for the Nazca Lines. This doesn't talk about all the ones we have kind of discussed in different parts of the world, right?
Right.
So if these so-called ancient people were quote unquote primitive, right? How were they precisely able to replicate some of these geometrical figures so perfectly from the ground, which you can only see from, once you're flying over them, right?
Right.
How perfect some of these are.
Yeah, it's interesting because, to draw a razor sharp, straight line, right? Probably not that difficult, You can find material, something that's rope-like, and you can use that as a guide, right? To keep it straight. You tie it to one pole, and keep pulling it for, 30 miles or whatever, Now, but when you're making these circles and these shapes and these bodies, what I'm saying? It's like, that's a whole different game, It's like, that's the mystery. It's like, how do you make something that big, without technology, Now, the interesting thing, along with the American historian Paul Kossoff, was the German researcher Marie Reich. Do you hear about her and the work that she did?
No.
So she arrived with Paul in 1932, I believe, right before the pre-Nazis rose to power in Germany. So she helped, Paul put the lines together and just, but she was the one who became the keeper of the signs of the lines. She's the one that swept away the dark gravel that covered the geoglyphs. So imagine sweeping dirt for miles and miles and miles for years, So she preserved it, and it was believed, they made this belief, conclusion or documentation that the lines were irrigation channels for crops, but it was determined that they were too shallow for that. So the mystery, still was like, well, okay, if they weren't not for crops, then what were they for, And there was always that belief that because going back to, 400 AD or so, the Nazca, the people that lived there, apparently, research shows that it was an abundant place for water. Like there was water everywhere, and that was their most precious resource. So it's possible that they went through a drought that just completely did away with the water, and maybe that was like a sign that they were trying to, send to the gods to make it rain. Maybe that was their belief.
Right.
That's like another historical, I don't know what you want to call it, theory or, documentation or story, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which makes total sense. We've talked about, well, I don't know if you and I have talked about, but there's the whole argument of climate change.
Right.
I've always been, okay, yes, we could be speeding it up with our cars and emissions, right?
Right.
But climate change has always been happening, even before we...
Oh, yeah.
Even before we had this technology of cars and factories.
Right.
So you brought up a good point, right? Because in the Nazca Lines, they have also found seashells around them. Stuff that you only have in the ocean.
Right.
Yet it's a fucking desert in the middle of Peru.
Right.
So again, it's just the cyclical, I think, this is just my opinion, the cyclical, cycle of Earth, right?
Right.
I want to also talk about, if you guys look up some of these, I'm going to say some of the most geometrical Nazca lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have the whale. So they've obviously seen a whale.
Right.
There's a Nazca line that's of a fucking whale.
Right.
Again, these are miles and miles and miles long. You can only see them and appreciate them from an airplane, right?
Yeah.
They have one that's a compass, but it's a compass that ancient people would use, right?
Right.
They have some of trapezoids. They have the one that they call the astronaut that just looks like an alien if you
Right.
look at it. They have a monkey one. They have a dog one. The hummingbird. Have you seen the hummingbird?
I have not seen that one. No.
Guys, look at the hummingbird. Tell me, how the fuck did they do that? Like, there's more to this. Now we'll talk about my conspiracies after. Right?
Did you know that speaking of those animals, the geoglyphs, did you know that Maria Reich, the researcher that was with Paul, did you know that she suggested that they served as an astronomical calendar? Because her theory was that these large line sizes had ceremonial reasons, and they were signals, for the gods, to see it from above, and send water, of course, and all that, But
Yeah.
but they coincide. The animals coincide with ceremonial reasons, seasons. Sorry. So it's
Could
one of those
be.
things where different cultures around the world associate those same animals. You would see like in the Aztec calendar, for example, and Mayan, for example, where it's like here's summer, here's winter. So it's interesting that there's a possible correlation. That was her theory, and of course there are scientists that say no, that's not it. But there's still a whole set of scientists that say, yeah, that actually could be it. So there's like two
boring
different
ass scientists.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so there's also a spider.
Yes.
There's also a phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
There's a heron bird. There's a parrot. There's a hands one. They call it hands. Then there's a tree one. There's another hummingbird one. There's one that's a star. Now, again, there's hundreds of them. These are the most precise and most famous geometrical Nazca lines.
Right.
And now, who are these gods?
Yeah,
Again,
right.
let's put this all together. The Nazca lines are just in Peru. We went over 10 different 10 different geoglyphs around the world.
Right.
They didn't have airplanes. They didn't, us humans, right? We didn't have airplanes. So where do these huge geoglyphs, what was their purpose? They were popping out everywhere around the world. Some of these, civilizations didn't know the other civilizations existed.
Right.
Now this is where my ancient aliens kicks in. I mean, could it be? Is it a coincidence?
No, I think it's seen in multiple places. There's a lot of similarities that that there's evidence of, like, well, here's a picture of an astronaut. Here's why. Here's a picture of an astronaut inside of a flying saucer. And it's just like, why would somebody draw that?
Yeah.
Like there's no there's no reason. Like there's no, like, the concept of flight didn't even exist. So how would they know?
Exactly.
Somebody in a flying saucer, and stars around them. So clearly it shows that they're flying through some kind of space,
Yeah. And now we're talking about geoglyphs. Now this also pertains to structures that we see also in buildings, right? In the Egyptian pyramids. We see it in fucking caves in the US, certain things or depictions that look very similar to other cultures and civilizations that supposedly never really talk to each other, right? When I was in Peru, I saw a lot of Inca, I guess you can say structures. And they also let us know that they had similar structures in Sri Lanka, where, in modern terms, you would be like, oh, the same architect who made that building here made the same one in Japan. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was, so they were saying that the scientists don't understand, right? Or maybe we don't give them enough credit to travel the oceans, right? A lot of people believe that the Vikings discovered, America being the entire fucking continent, north and south, right?
Right.
We're not talking about Columbus. We're just saying. So, we have recently in the last 100 years found Viking things in Nova Scotia, right?
Yeah.
So obviously Christopher Columbus was not the first one here, but who's to say that maybe they did not boat or knew that, traveled between all these countries, right?
Right.
But my thing is the precise, if you guys look at these Nazca lines, and at least the geometrical ones that I'm talking about, because there are lines that, look like a child drew it, right?
Yeah, right.
But some of these geometrical ones, like the phoenix, right? The fucking spider, the hummingbird, are crazy. Like, that's the type of shit you would use one of those geometric compasses that they give you in school.
Right.
You know that one where you have the pencil on one end and then you stick it in the middle and then draw your little thingy?
Your circle, yeah.
I failed geometry, by the way, guys. You know that thingy that you put the pencil in,
yeah.
and the thingy?
Yeah.
I mean, if you guys look up these Nazca lines, the geometrical ones, I mean, some of them are 30 miles long. How did they know by land?
Right.
And no one is able to explain that. How
Right.
did they know by land if they didn't have planes or anything, how to do it or that it would look that way?
Yeah.
That's some intellectual shit right there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But who did they want? You said the gods. So who are these gods?
And that's the thing.
Are
it's
they
like,
aliens?
yeah.
I'm gonna say it.
What if it is? What if, because today we just know the word alien. We know the word, UFO, and identified flying object and all that. But back then there was no technology. There was no language. There was just fear, right? Because, I mean, you got to remember, you think back even to the Chinese when they invented fireworks, right? They, a few thousand Chinese completely scared an entire army away by just launching fireworks because of fear. They didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
They all heard is, these lights and sounds. And they're like, oh shit, run, and that defeated a whole army that way. So it's one of those things where back then fear, it's like a fire in the sky, right? A UFO, a visitor. You're either going to be scared or you're going to see them as a god because your belief is that there is a god, right? That gives you crops and gives you water and gives you land. So in their mind, they're thinking, well, he's come, and maybe, maybe in return we got to kill some people, sacrifice or, or, what do you want, whatever. But maybe it's just some advanced civilization visited us, at that time, and we were not ready for them,
Or were we ready for them?
That's
back then.
Right.
Yeah. So all these cultures, you just brought up the Chinese culture. We're talking about the Nazca Lines in Peru. We have the Mayan, Aztec, you name it. The Egyptians, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They all have certain similarities in their cultures, even though none of them kind of knew that they existed.
Right.
I believe, this is my opinion, guys, that, and again, this is not to talk about religion, right? I do believe that back then, without the technology that we have now, right? Because now anyone can film anything, Photoshop it, and none of us really know, right?
Right.
Back then, I do believe that they were more open, and this feeling of God came, because they all come in ships, or they all come from the sky, right?
Right.
So all these ancient civilizations were trying to send messages up to them, so that they can see them. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Advanced civilization. What it constitutes an advanced civilization? We're not going to answer that, but I mean, just think about it, guys. Guys, get into this rabbit hole of the fucking geoglyphs.
Yeah.
What was their purpose? Come on, guys.
Right. And, one thing that really stuck out with me was that with the research that Marie did and Paul, is that it was determined also that some of these lines converged on the sunsets and on the sun and that in the time of winter and summer solstice. So these lines end at the horizon right at the day of sunset of summer solstice or winter solstice.
And you know what else does too?
What?
Stonehenge.
Yes.
So I do believe there's also an astrological purpose to it, right?
Yeah. And that's another thing. A physicist, Amelia Carolina Sparavigna. has found some alignments with particularly bright stars. So these geoglyphs, the Nazca geoglyphs, do align with bright stars such as the Alkaid and the Alioth, which are in the Ursa Major constellation, Vega, and Fomalhaut. Now, if you remember the word Vega, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Contact. Do you ever see that movie Contact?
I don't think I have.
It's a good one. It's a good one to check out. Jodie Foster's in it, and what's his name? Oh my god, I can't think of his name. Southern actor. Anyways, the movie Carl Sagan, who had that TV show Cosmos before Tyson, he had that TV show in the 70s, The Cosmos, and he wrote a book called Contact, and it was made into a movie in the early 90s, and he died. Carl Sagan died, so he was one of the famous cosmologists, and when he died, the movie came out. It's a good movie, and it has to do with, we get a signal from out there, from Vega, actually, and we decide to build the signal, so they send us instructions to build a machine to go there, and it has to do with, we do it, she goes there, and it's her experience of getting there, and who she talks to and what they say. So it's really interesting that there's alignment to Vega, because it comes up in cosmology, in pop culture cosmology, in the movie Contact. So if you're not seen that movie, check it out. It's good. Matthew McConaughey's the other actor in that movie. Matthew McConaughey and Jodie Foster.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So I think this is something you guys should, if you're ever bored, look into. My thing is, what was their purpose, right?
Right.
The fact that some of these are 30 miles or longer.
Right.
And yet you can only see their beauty from a fucking airplane.
Yeah.
That's fucking amazing.
Yeah. That's pretty mind-blowing. It's like, it's one thing to make crop circles, right? But then it's like, okay, these things are miles long. It's like, that's a long distance.
And the issue about crop circles is crop circles are on crops, so they're recent. Right. These are fucking ancient.
Right.
Even the ones that we talked about, I named 10 in different countries, they're fucking ancient. So if crop circles, are cropped in the crops, so they're recent, these are fucking old as hell.
That's crazy.
So make that make sense to me. I understand the whole astrological thing, but to me, it's like, well, how long did it take to make? How did they know the measurements? How did they know exactly what they were making? I think they were a lot smarter than we give them credit for, right?
Oh,
Ancient
definitely.
and civilizations.
Definitely. Well, a lot of the rudimentary math and the concept of zero came from the Aztecs and all that. So obviously they knew math in some form or another, and they were able to use it, because they had to build, aqueducts and, and to, and carry water and this and this. So it's like, obviously they knew how to use it. Today we take it for granted because it's like, oh, we'll use a computer, build a building, but back then it's like, no, they had to use math in the form that maybe we don't even can't even comprehend, because maybe there was no pen and paper back then. It was like, they had to put it to use in a different way that made sense to them and could translate mathematically today to making sense to us now. But it's just amazingly mind-blowing, because it's like, it's so, these things are so huge.
Right. And that's the thing that is mind-boggling. I'm definitely still going to be a believer that there's more to the story. I think that an advanced civilization, right?
Yeah.
Is linked to all of this.
Yeah.
Guys, we have a space force. We have a fucking space force.
Yeah.
So this is not to scare anybody. I just think we've been oblivious and not wanting to believe that there's life outside
Right.
of this world, but we have a space force now.
Yep.
And there's a lot of declassified documents by the US government, the British government, and all the governments have declassified documents in the last 10 years.
Yep.
Stating that there is something out there.
Yeah.
So maybe they were ready, the ancient civilizations. They wanted to make contact.
Right.
I don't know.
You know, speaking of contact, I know that you don't like horror movies, but I have to bring this up because there's a movie called Prometheus, and it's was made by Ridley Scott, and it's kind of the prequel to the movie Alien, which came out in 1979. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but Prometheus has to do with this team of scientists, right, by put together by a billionaire who, basically read all about these ancient aliens and stuff, and there's these these geoglyphs and pictoglyphs and all that, and caves and stuff that point to, you know this is where you got to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he decides to put the team together and a ship, and says we're sending this team out there because that's they want us to come meet them. So the whole movie has to do with this team of scientists that go to meet this civilization, right? And it's really cool because it touches on all this that we're talking about. And the team goes out there, but I'm so sorry for you, Mary, because it's super horror, like scary, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But woven in between, there's this storyline that's really interesting about the beings that created humans.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, from the opening scene of the movie, the first 2 minutes of the movie, they show you how life was created on Earth, and then they left.
Mm-hmm.
And they left Earth to evolve, for a billion years, 3 billion years, whatever it was. But those beings are out there. So, of course, fast forward billions of years later, or we're now intelligent, we have technology now, and we find these cave drawings and geoglyphs and everything that points to, hey, we got to go out there in space. And then we finally do, but then it becomes space horror,
Mm-hmm.
But still super interesting. So it's one of those movies, if you're interested, check it out. It's Prometheus. And it kind of touches on all this. It's really fascinating. They did a really good job with it. But yeah, and did you also know about the controversy that happened 6 years ago?
No.
Oh, you're gonna love this, because this is where I say naughty, naughty Greenpeace, naughty, naughty Greenpeace defaced the Nazca Lines in Peru.
Okay, so who is Greenpeace for those of us who don't know?
Oh, it's the organization, right, where they go out there, they go out there and they try to spread the message of, save the planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they go after corporations, usually big corporations. They find you anywhere and they protest. You're polluting the air, you're polluting the grass, the trees, and you're cutting down the trees. And so it's like, I get it, they have a good cause, right? They have, but they're a little bit militant sometimes. Like they go too far, and in this case they went too far. Mind you, this is December 8th of 2014, okay? Not like 60 years ago. No, this was like 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They went out there and put their Greenpeace message right over the Nazca Lines.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And the Peru government was like, fuck you, like, get the shit out of here, like you disgrace, like, ancient civilization, like preserved,
Yeah,
geoglyphs.
That to me is stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like going to write graffiti on Stonehenge. It's the same thing. It's like, what the fuck, It's like,
Yeah.
why would
Which people have done.
I'm sure. I mean, it's just, and the sad thing is they do it here locally because, we're in Southern California, so we have Joshua Tree, and there's a lot of, history there because there were a lot of tribes that used to live there, the southwestern Native American tribes, and there's a lot of, history there. So what do people do? They fucking graffiti the rocks and stuff there. And I'm like, what the hell? So, like, right before COVID, I don't know if you remember, they closed down Joshua Tree. They were not allowing anybody to go in anymore because of all the graffiti. And it was sad because it's one of my favorite places to go watch a sunset or a sunrise, or on the right time of the year, you can go photograph the Milky Way. Like, it's this beautiful, like a desert here that we have next to Palm Springs, But yeah, I can't believe it. I mean, why would people graffiti rocks? And it's like, well, Greenpeace did it to Nazca, so it's like, oh my God, but.
And unfortunately, those are one of the things that happen in the world. It is something that is well documented historically, that people deface historical landmarks.
Yeah.
We've seen that in Afghanistan recently as well,
Right.
where they're just trying to fucking, whatever point they're trying to fucking make, they deface and destroy historical shit.
Yeah.
So there's probably a lot of shit that we just don't know about and we'll never know about because it was destroyed by generations, before us, which is really sad.
Yeah.
Because you and I are both nerds, right? In the sense that we enjoy this kind of stuff, is to see, we appreciate these historical finds, and to see someone else kind of deface them or destroy them to make a point is just sad.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's the human nature and the human race and how we do things, I guess. And it's so sad. I didn't know that. I hadn't heard. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's crazy. It sucks because it's like when you think about the stuff like these Nazca and geoglyphs, and you think of Stonehenge and all that, we're not exactly doing that today. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like what are we doing? We're using materials that rot, like plastic and rubber does not last. Styrofoam does not last. Concrete does not last. So it's like we only have a shelf life. Everything that we're using, right now, it's like it has a shelf life. So in a million years, none of this will be here. It'll just be dirt. But the sad thing is, we don't actually, with the exception of Mount Rushmore, with the presidents, heads. I mean, what else are we doing? Nothing, right? We're not making, we're not like, doing beautiful things with forests and stuff and all that. So it's really sad that you have these, like you mentioned, all these ancient, especially like in Afghanistan with those ancient statues that the Taliban destroyed. Mm-hmm. And those are thousands, tens of thousands of years old. Like it's a part of human history. Doesn't matter what religion you believe in. Like that goes back to way back into Sumerian or before Sumerian times, And it's just like, nope, they destroyed it because it's like, oh, fuck your armies or whatever. You're going to destroy this shit. And I'm like, what? It's like, it's just mind blowing that somebody would deface any of these, ancient ruins of any civilization, whether you agree with them or don't, or like the country or hate them. It's like, it's a part of world history that we have to respect.
Yeah. Yeah. And if only everyone saw it the way you and I see it for historical, purposes, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, well, now I'm depressed. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
Well, thank you for doing and talking about this subject with me, Leonie.
This is fun.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Really fascinating.
And I love that you and I said Stonehenge at the same time. We're on the same fucking page. I love it.
I'm telling you. So next guy that says, why do you want to go there, Mary? Then you say, nope, can't date you anymore. Move on. Moving along. He doesn't take you on a date to Stonehenge. You do not date him.
Oh, God.
New rule.
New rule. Oh. There's a Dua Lipa song. New rule.
Yeah.
It's called. Yeah. All right. I get you.
Yeah.
So, until next time, thank you everyone who made it this far, but also look up these geoglyphs, these Nazca lines. There's hundreds of them, but look at these geometrical ones. How the fuck did they get these precise geometrical geoglyphs down to the T?
Yeah.
And some of them are 30 miles long, and you can only see them when you fly over them.
Yep.
Explain that to me. If you give me a good explanation, I'll stop thinking about aliens.
You'll never stop.
But nobody has, so
yeah.
Aliens are real.
Yep.
Now, when I say aliens, I'm not thinking about little blue, there's life outside of here that's smarter than us.
Right.
That's how I see it. I'm not thinking of the little blue, That was my alien noise. Did you like it?
You're only a true alien can make that sound. So now I know you're one of them.
I am an alien. Well, again, hope you guys have a great week, and we will see you next time. Bye. That was episode 38 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms. And follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely the letter C Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.